In the deep blue, sound takes on the softness of cloth folded into a drawer. Everything you have carried through the day seems to be wrapped and set down. Here, light is patient. Not the sharp, hurried light of clocks and screens, but a slow, bioluminescent hush that blooms and fades like a thought remembered and then released. If your night feels long where you are, come with me a little way below the bright confusion of waking hours, to a place that keeps watch in the quiet. This is the deep blue abyss, an underwater sanctuary that breathes in time with its own small labors, and tonight it will keep a kindly vigil for you. I am the caretaker here. My hands know the salt and the smoothness of things that have been used and mended many times. I have learned to listen to the rhythm of currents as the town hears the clock, to notice how a slab of coral breathes when a warm vent plays across it, to tell by the tilt of a kelp leaf whether the afternoon current has been gentle or restless. I speak softly because the place itself prefers a low conversation, the kind that lands like a pebble and hardly ripples at all. If you are with me now, not as a guest in hurry, but as someone willing to allow attention to be gentle, let your gaze rest for a moment on the slow glow around us and on the patchwork architecture of this place. Alcoves of sponge, low ledges of coral, curtains of kelp that hang like soft screens and sway with courteous motion. There is an economy to this sanctuary. Nothing is wasted, and every small thing has a work to do. The lamp-like blooms that cling to the underside of a ledge keep their own quiet, pulsing like tiny, patient hearts. The warm vent, not a flame but a gentle mineral swell rising from the reef's seams, is our hearth. It does not crackle. It sighs warmth into the water, making a pleasant buoyancy around the alcoves where we sit. Around that vent we gather when evening thickens, and when the work of the day is done. A few neighbors, an artisan who tends the coral, apprentices who are learning to handle the fine tools that we use here, and sometimes a traveler who has drifted far and needs a place to fold themselves into rest. Tonight there is a small summons. A single tear has opened in one of the kelp curtains that hangs before a sleeping alcove, and beside it a hairline fissure has shown along a familiar coral ledge where the current can nudge at older seams. It is not an emergency. There is no rush. The seawater here has a way of knowing when we need attention, and it nudges, just enough for us to notice and to be given the chance to care. This kind of small-making right is what steadies the sanctuary. We mend so the place may continue to hold what is weary, and in mending we return a little order to the way things feel inside us. We gather our small instruments of repair like people laying out teaspoons and cloths. The artisan, a steady pair of hands who has worked at this reef for years, draws a narrow band of coral-smoothing shells from a cloth. The apprentices practice the long, patient motions, scraping, smoothing, testing how resin takes to the skin of old coral. Their movements are measured. They are learning that hurry only vexes delicate things. A neighbor, a soft-voiced one with eyes that catch the light like cut glass, brings a coil of resin thread made from woven kelp fibers. The traveler, face still holding the map of their day in faint lines, sits nearer the warm vent, letting the mineral plume lift the wear from their shoulders. We speak in small exchanges while our hands set to work. The trader of luminous seeds passes a tiny, cool bloom along. We tuck it not as ornament but as a little lamp for the seam while we work. Someone hums a tune that has no words, a low, single note that seems to sit easily in the warm current. The sanctuary listens and answers in its own way. A faint undulation comes through the kelp. The bioluminescence along the ledges brightens as if to give better sight, and even the warm vent deepens its exhalation in a steady, reassuring breath. Before we begin the repair proper, there is a small ritual we follow, not out of mystique, but because ritual slows the hand and steadies attention. The artisan lays out a flat of sea silk, a fabric of spun sponge and fine kelp, and smooths it with gentle strokes, each pass designed to find any flaw before it becomes a problem. The apprentices watch and mirror, hands meeting the texture and learning the way the surface replies, sometimes giving, sometimes holding a little. We choose a patch that matches, close in hue, flexible in tide, ready to sit unseen when the work is done. The traveler leans forward to look, and for a moment there is a quiet sharing of focus that feels like a small, civilized kindness, the kind that makes shelters out of ordinary things. There are tools here you might not have met on land. The shells we use as needles are not sharp like metal, but honed, smooth, and precise. When threaded with resin, they hold like stitches in a well-loved garment. The resin itself is warmed by the vent to a molasses of pliant brightness, pulled thin and guided into seams where it will knit. We do not force the resin. We coax it. The kelp threads are braided with small, even loops, and when fixed, they breathe with the current rather than resisting it. Each choice is made to preserve, not overpower, the living architecture. As they prepare, the artisan tells us a small story, not to distract, but to orient. And stories are how communities remember the manner of their making. Once, the artisan says, a long while back, a patch was made with thread that was too tight. It held the coral out of shape for a season. We learned that the coral liked room to settle. It needed the kindness of slackness, the allowance to find itself again. Since then, we stitch with a memory of that error. We allow a little breathing space. The apprentices listen, and their hands loosen as if the story has unknotted a tension they did not know they held. You may find, as you listen and watch with me, that your own hands soften. If you are comfortable, fold your own fingers together for a moment and notice the small spaces between them. Let that awareness travel up your arms. There is no hurry. This is not an instruction to hurry or to fix anything inside you. It is merely a gentle suggestion, like the soft cue of a tide, to see where your own tensions sit. The sanctuary does not demand that you change. It offers a model of steady attention. Look, choose, do the work, and then allow for settling. The first measured steps of mending begin. An apprentice brings the kelp thread, hands it across on a small shell dish, and the artisan accepts it, warming it in their palms near the vent. The warmth loosens the braid, makes it supple and ready. The artisan threads a shell needle and passes it through the kelp curtain's edge where the tear has opened. There is a slow, attentive rhythm to the stitches. 2 loops in, 1 pause, a press to seat the resin. Each step is named in the work only by the sensation it makes: a tuck, a press, a smoothing. Repeat again. There is no hurry. The sanctuary seems to listen and to answer. The light adjusts itself. The warm plume steadies, and the kelp curtains begin to align where they were previously estranged. As the team works, a small plate of nutrient bloom is passed. A warm, dense swell of microflora that tastes of the reef's seasons. It is shared simply, each taking the smallest portion as if to say that we are none of us self-contained. We feed one another in minor, sustaining ways. A neighbor jokes quietly about a time when a tide scoured the ledges, and they found a collection of tiny stones that, once polished, now sit like beads in the artisan's tools. A small laugh skims across the current. It is brief and light, and then everyone's attention returns to the hands. At times, the artisan pauses and shows the apprentices a technique: how to kiss the resin between shell and coral so that it takes without pulling, how to run a thumb along a stitch to know whether it will hold, how to let the kelp frond lie so that it will move with the water rather than against it. These demonstrations are miniature lessons in patience. They are also invitations to practice gentleness, not only with the materials but with oneself. The hands that have made 1,000 small mends have a memory of care that is not brittle. It is soft and durable. You can make your own small observances as you listen. Let your shoulders gather nothing more than the air they need. If it feels natural, let your breath ease a fraction slower, matching it to the sanctuary's exhalation. As the warm vent sighs out, let your own breath release. There is no precise count to this, only an invitation to slow in a way that is comfortable. The apprentices match their breathing to the rhythm of the work as they learn. Breath follows hand, and hand follows breath, and so a circle of ease grows. We move now to the coral fissure. It is small and hairline, a seam that the current would play upon if left unattended. The artisan calls for a patch the size of a palm. They take the sea silk, cut with a shell that has been worn to a fine edge, and lay the patch over the fissure. Before fastening, they smooth the patch's underside with a soft resin wash, a glaze that will encourage union rather than adhesion that is too abrupt. The apprentices assist by holding the edges, while the artisan seats the patch, each one learning how much pressure is enough and how much is too much. There is a brief exchange. An elder's remark about the color of light this season. A neighbor's reply about a bird-like creature that has been building a nest of sea gloss nearby. These conversations are low. They do not pull focus, but they warm the moment like the mineral plume. They remind everyone that work here is part of a life shared, that repairing one thing is also the act of tending to the place where many lives rest. As the resin sets, the artisan takes a tiny shell brush and goes around the new seam, smoothing the edges until the patch communes with the old coral. The steady brush sound is like a comb through a child's hair. It is steadiness itself. Each pass makes the seam less noticeable. The kelp curtain is next. The stitches are drawn with care, each loop given space so the curtain will drape naturally. The apprentices practice the loops under the artisan's watchful eye, their fingers slow and precise. At a certain point, an apprentice hesitates, a doubt born not of inability, but of wanting the stitch to be perfect. The artisan smiles without loudness and shows the apprentice how to let the stitch rest, to allow the material around it to claim its own shape. Perfection, the artisan murmurs, is a kindness that forgets to leave room for things to breathe. The apprentice relaxes their hand, and the stitch, which had been taut, loosens gently into place. It is a small, instructive unraveling, and the lesson is learned not by words but by the footing of hands. You may notice, perhaps, that as this work proceeds, something else in the sanctuary shifts. The bioluminescent blooms that had been sparing in their light begin to mirror the progress in a little ripple of brightness. The warm vent's breath lengthens and slows. The kelp curtains, where mended, settle with a contented fold. The environment answers our attention with its own small changes, as if the place itself were grateful to be tended. There is a reciprocity here. We give care, and the place gives back a calm that is not theatrical but practical. The kind you feel when someone polishes a window, and suddenly the world is clearer at the edge. Midway through this, the traveler leans close enough to the repair to watch the brush strokes. Their face, which had been set in the map of travel, begins to uncrinkle. They tell us, softly, of being awake for a long stretch of night where they had made camp. The quiet beyond all the lights where sleep would not come. Their voice is quiet enough that it does not break the sanctuary's hush. We do not attempt to fix their sleeplessness with words. Instead, we offer the ritual of attention. We share the nutrient bloom and the warmth. We let the ritual of mending stand as a work that is about steadiness rather than immediate solution. Often, small acts become a scaffold for rest. The apprentices sing a note, low and sustained, and the sound threads through the water like a soft shawl. It is not loud, it is merely enough to keep the mind company. If you are comfortable, you might match that tone internally, letting a low, steady sound sit in the chest and then leave. There is no rehearsal of exactness, only the comfort of a shared cadence. As the stitchwork continues, the artisan pauses and presses their thumb lightly against the warmed resin to encourage it to lie flat. A technique practiced for years that always, despite its smallness, brings a sense of completion. We are nearly at the point of finishing the visible mending, but there is a last, delicate task to do. The artisan takes up a ring of scallop shell, smoothed at the edge, and threads it with a tiny length of kelp fiber, binding it in such a way that the patch will hang with the same language as the reef, flexible, breathing, and yielding. The apprentice who is entrusted with this thread watches the artisan show the final loop, the way the ring anchors without strangling. It is an apprenticeship in restraint as much as skill. There is, before the final knot is tied, a small communal pause. We all, without planning, allow a moment of stillness. The warm vent's breath seems to synchronize with our own. The bioluminescence holds a steady, soft halo. The kelp curtains are poised like a pair of shutters waiting to be closed. In this stillness, the artisan asks if anyone wants to add a lamp or a bloom to the seam for extra light when the night grows very dark. A neighbor reaches quietly to present a bloom the size of a coin, its glow like a fingernail polished from old light. It is affixed with the same tenderness as the stitching. There is a small, wordless gratitude that passes among us. If, as you sit here with me, you find the day's small knots loosening, an eased jaw, a deepening breath, a slackening at the place where you hold your wrists, let that be the only work you must do. The thought of mending need not be literal. It is enough to watch the motions, to breathe in the rhythm of care, and to allow your body some of the respite we offer to the reef. Should you wish to come back to nights like this, a quiet follow or saving of this playlist will keep these evenings within reach for you. Nothing more than a small nudge to find this calm when you seek it again. The last loop waits to be drawn. The apprentice who holds the ring leans in, guided by the artisan's quiet hand, and pulls the thread through with a deliberate slowness that is nearly reverent. The wound in the kelp has dimmed to a memory, the coral seam smoothed to a line that might pass as natural if you did not know it had been tended. Yet there remains one task, the sealing of the inner edge, where the current might, if left, find a new way to tease at an old weakness. For that, we need a particular kind of resin, a slow-setting gel infused with fine sand so that it will knit with the texture of the reef and not sit foreign upon it. An apprentice is sent to fetch the jar from the low shelf by the vent. They move with the quiet competence of someone who has been entrusted with a thing that must be handled gently. The jar is cold at first touch, and for a moment the apprentice hesitates, listening as if the vessel might speak. Then they uncork it and bring it close to the warmth just enough to make it yielding. The artisan tests a single bead on their own fingertip and then pats it along the seam, watching how it spreads, how it adheres, how it accepts the press of a thumb. The apprentices gather to see, leaning in with a curiosity that is patient rather than hungry. We have reached this juncture where the repair's finish will determine how the sanctuary rests for the next tide. The artisan asks for steady hands and a steady breath, not to force the work, but to carry it. In the stillness beneath the warm vent, the sound of careful fingers and the soft brushing of the shell are the only noises that matter. You might, if you feel inclined, breathe with them for a moment. Breathe in as the artisan lifts the resin, and breathe out as it is applied. Breathe in as the threads are smoothed, and breathe out as the kelp settles. Let each breath be at your own pace and only so far as feels comfortable. As the resin is spread and the final loops are drawn, the sanctuary seems to fold into itself with a small, contented settling. The patch settles like a hand nudged into place, and the coral seam blurs into continuity. Light flattens into a calm level. The warm vent's exhale grows slower, as if the place has exhaled a long, satisfied breath. It is in this breathing that the sanctuary and we, for a moment, are woven together. The rhythm outside answering the rhythm inside. We pause here, on the cusp of the last knot. The apprentice's fingers are steadying into new knowledge. The traveler's face shows a softness that has not been there earlier in the evening. Around us, small lamps flicker in recognition, and the kelp curtains, neatly mended, sway with a gentleness that seems to say they will take care of any stray currents for the night. There is an easy confidence in such work. It does not promise grand transformation, but it assures continuity. The practical magic of mending is not spectacle. It is persistence, repetition, attention. And so we hold this quiet, this almost completion with the same care with which we held the patch. There is a sense of a next breath gathering, patient and ready, a small hinge waiting to close. Let your own breath follow if it feels good to do so. Softer now, slower perhaps by the space of a thought. We will take that next step together. For now, rest in the warmth of this halfway sunned calm, listening to the slow, honest work around you. The sanctuary keeping its patient watch as the patch learns to be part of the reef once again. The final knot is drawn with a deliberateness that sounds almost like a word spoken softly. The loop closes and the ring settles, and there is a small, collective unclenching. The apprentice lays down their tools as you might lay down a pen when a page has been fully written. For a moment we simply listen to the tiny sounds that follow this finishing. The faint settling of kelp as its fibers find their new neighbor. The minute, comfortable rasp as the resin cools. The warm vent's slow sigh that marks an end and an invitation at once. The traveler watches the seam, and there is an expression that suggests some part of their night has been acknowledged, even if sleep has not yet made a claim. We take the last measures not to parade the repair, but to ensure it will rest without fuss. The artisan moves along the seam with a soft brush, as if smoothing the sleep lines from a brow. An apprentice follows with a small lamp bloom, testing the light for the little alcove it will keep there. A neighbor adjusts the curtain so that it will fall in the right place and make the shadow gentle. Another places a tiny bead of polished shell where the stitches meet, not for necessity, but for the quiet pleasure of a job beautifully finished. And then we tidy up. The shells are stacked back into their cloth, the jars are returned to their shelf, and the loose threads are coiled with the same care you might use to fold a scarf you love. This is the ordinary conclusion of a day's work, but ordinary in this place is something like sanctuary, an attentive, unshowy competence that makes space for rest. The apprentice who had hesitated earlier now moves with a confidence that is nearly humble. They sweep a brush and hand the artisan a cloth without a word. The artisan accepts with the same modesty that has always accompanied their craft. As the room settles, the warm vent draws in a slightly cooler current, and with that change the light shifts. Bioluminescent blooms, which had been attentive in pinpricks to the task, relax their intensity and spread a softer, low glow across the alcoves. The kelp curtains finish their small settling, and where the stitches lie there is only the suggestion of a seam, a line that, were you not told, you might think part of the reef's natural pattern. The place breathes, and as it breathes, it gives an uncomplicated permission to slow. You may notice, without needing to think about it, that the space you occupy has altered a little. Perhaps your shoulders have descended a fraction. Perhaps the expression the day etched into your face has softened like a crease pressed by a thumb. That is as much as we ask here. A small easing, not a rite of transformation. The sanctuary does not insist on miracles. It does, however, keep the work of steady tenderness, and that is often more useful than any sudden remedy. There is a moment that follows finishing a work in which conversation is soft and practical. The artisan passes around a small cup, not of tea as you would know it on land, but of a warm mineral swirl drawn from the vent where certain nourishing particles collect. It is shared with a courtesy that is quiet rather than ceremonial. We sip or do not sip in our own time. Someone tells a short, private story about a time an apprentice stitched an entire curtain in a single night by mistake. The laughter is small and familiar. The traveler comments that the weight they have been carrying feels different now, not because it has been taken, but because someone has touched it and set it down beside them. As the low talk fades, the sanctuary's sounds take over again. The soft, distant shudder of a current, the gentle rubbing of kelp fronds as they answer one another's motion, the vent's even breathing. In that chorus you might find something like a metronome, slow, sure, and insistently calm. If it feels right, allow your own breath to take the cadence of that metronome. Breathe in gently as the warm vent draws air-like water toward us, and breathe out as it lets go. There is no harsh counting here, only a suggestion of length and ease. Let the in-breath arrive softly, and let the out-breath be a moment longer, a comfortable extension rather than a strain. If you are careful about breathing for health reasons, adjust as you need. Always at your own pace. We linger in that measured breathing for a while. The apprentices, having finished their stitches, practice smoothing the kelp with the flat of their hands in slow arcs, a movement that is as much about finishing the work as it is a small exercise in presence. The artisan watches them and nods once, quietly pleased. It is a small economy of praise, an economy in which recognition is exact and unadorned. When the lamp bloom that held the seam's light is set, the traveler is offered a place closer to the hearth of the vent. They accept and fold themselves into a sponge alcove that has been softened with old sea silk blankets. If you picture yourself here, you might imagine a cushion that remembers many nights, not a new, sharp thing, but a gathered comfort. Let your shoulders meet this support. Notice how a good surface will hold you without forcing you to do anything in return. There is a friend in such steadiness. As the night grows deeper in its own terms, we take a moment for an intentional unwinding. Not an exercise of compulsion, but a guided descent in attention. Start with your feet, if that suits you. Feel them rest on whatever surface supports them. Imagine them sinking into a sponge alcove shaped gently to their outline. There is no pressure to sink further than is comfortable, merely a sense of giving your weight to something willing to hold it. From there, allow that sensation to pass upwards through your calves and knees, as if each part is being received by the reef's soft architecture. There is no hurry. Let each small shift be its own event. Move your attention without strain to the pelvis, to the way the body balances there. If you carry tension in an area, see it only as a remembered thing that two hands have set down and walked away from. Imagine now the torso, the chest and belly, and how the warm vent's plume nudges the ribs to ease. Let the belly softens, as if someone has opened a small, gentle drawer and tucked the day's sharp edges within. Breathe into that softness. If it is comfortable, allow the exhale to be a fraction longer than the inhale. The point is not technique, but invitation. A kindly suggestion rather than a rule. Bring your awareness to your shoulders, those familiar carriers of more than their share. Picture them as objects you might set down on a bench, one at a time. Let each shoulder roll, if it wants to, like a small tide smoothing a stone. The hands, which have held and created so many things today, rest now on your lap or by your sides. Notice the space between your fingers and the lightest touch of the air. If your jaw is clenched, give it permission to relax like a curtain loosening its fold. The face can become still in the same patient way the reef wears its lines, softened by time and attention. As you pass through this body scan at the sanctuary's tempo, the soundscape thins. The bioluminescence dims further until it is a soft, encompassing glow rather than a series of points. The vent's breath is slow and steady, enough to mark time, not to hurry. The kelp curtains breathe with the current, and the whole place holds a kind of quiet that is active rather than vacant. It cares by doing small things and then stopping to watch them settle. We will do a brief and gentle breathing pattern now, if you are comfortable, to help steady the shift toward sleep. Always at your own comfort, breathe in softly through the nose. A gentle, easy in-breath that might be imagined like the warm plume finding its way to a hollow. Pause only for a moment if that feels natural. This is optional, not required. Then let the out-breath be slightly longer, a soft release that moves through the mouth or the nose as you prefer. We will repeat this 3 times, matching it to the sanctuary's quiet rhythm. Breathe in, 1, 2, 3, softly and without force. If it feels okay, hold the breath for a brief beat, not a strain, only the gentlest of pauses. Breathe out, 1, 2, 3, 4, and allow the exhale to be a little longer, letting it ripple through your shoulders and chest. Again, breathe in. 1, 2, 3, a tender gathering. Hold, if you like, for a gentle moment. Breathe out. 1, 2, 3, 4, and sense the body's small welcoming of rest. One more time, breathe in, 1, 2, 3, and when you breathe out, 1, 2, 3, 4, notice how the sanctuary seems to answer with its own small, even sigh. If this pattern is not comfortable in any way, change it. The aim is ease. As you move with the breath, picture the sanctuary's rhythm enveloping you. Imagine the warm vent as a small hearth light, the kind that draws a hand in for warmth and lets it go without surprise. The kelp curtains, mended and lying well, offer privacy and the soft friction of being seen but not observed. The coral, now smooth where it had been fussed, has a very ordinary dignity. The patch is not heroic, it is simply serviceable, and in that service lies its beauty. We will now invite a deeper relaxation through small, sensory images connected to the repair work you witnessed. Picture each stitch as a small reassurance being placed along the spine of the day. The shell needle that passed through the kelp might be imagined as a tiny pointer showing you where you can let go. The resin's warmth is the kind of heat that encourages flexibility rather than tightness. Think of each part of your body in turn as a place where a careful hand might rest for a moment and then move on. Never to fix something fundamentally wrong, but to allow it to be tended. Begin with your feet again, and imagine them warmed by that gentle mineral plume. They are held, not pressed. Let your knees note this holding and relax. Let your hips feel the ease of the sponge cushion beneath. Let the breath rest in the belly and then wash outward. Your chest receives the breath like a steady sea breeze, and your shoulders drop into the bench of support, as if setting down small tools that are no longer needed for now. The hands relax, the fingers unfurl like kelp letting go of a drift, and the back settles into a calm curve. If any small memory of the day's strain appears, a to-do list, a snagged thought, imagine placing it on a shelf by the vent. No need to wrestle with the memory. No need to explain. Simply lay it down among the familiar objects that live here. The sanctuary accepts it without question and sets a small label upon it. For another time, the simplicity of that placement can be a small relief in itself. There is a quality to the air, or the water as we might imagine it here, that carries the faint trace of the work we have done. A smell that is not sharp but mineral soft, a suggestion of warmed kelp and polished shell. Let that scent, imagined or recalled, be part of the fabric that the sanctuary offers you now. Smells can sit at the back of memory, and in this place they tend to be comforting rather than incisive. Allow it to anchor a sense of arrival. Here is a place where you are permitted to rest. The apprentices now move to less precise tasks, arranging a small drift of shells so the light will scatter kindly on the alcove floor, smoothing the sea silk that will cradle the traveler's head, tucking a stray kelp frond so it will not brush the face. These are minor ministrations, but they have the same character as the mending itself. Unhurried, exacting only where kindness requires it. In watching such attention, you may feel your own attention softening. It is as if gentleness begets gentleness. Before we allow words to thin and the voice to lower further, there is a small final courtesy we perform for the traveler, and for anyone who has come to this sanctuary seeking a few hours' respite. The artisan stands and places a palm over the heart of the traveler for a moment, not to bless or to promise anything, but to acknowledge the presence of their weary company. It is a gesture like closing the lid of a box you have handled with care. The traveler exhales, long and surprised at the simplicity of that relief. We will now move more quietly toward sleep. You do not need to do anything but be present to what is already happening in your body. Let the exhale become the invitation. Each out-breath asks less of you and offers more of a letting go. If you notice thoughts returning, imagine them as small fishes that swim by the edge of your sight. They pass, and you let them pass without following. You do not need to gather them. The sanctuary will be here tomorrow, and the shelf by the vent will keep them if you wish to set them there. As the sanctuary's light sinks to a thin, steady glow, the artisan retakes their small shell brush and runs it once, lightly, along the surface of the repaired seam. A finishing touch that needs no comment. That single motion seems to slow the tempo down further. It is a quiet signal that the work of noticing is complete for the night. The apprentices settle into their places. Some hum a low, wordless tone. The sound is not a performance, but company. A human-made background that makes silence easier to bear. If you would like, let that hum become an inner sound. A low, supportive presence at the base of the throat, steady and calm. Allow it to be a companion that is not demanding. Match your breath to it if that feels natural. Breathe in with the hum. Breathe out with its soft fade. Repeat this for as long as it is soothing. When the hum and the breath align, there is an ease that is like two people walking side by side in step without speaking. We have not promised sleep, nor have we demanded it. What we have offered is steadiness, a place, a few hands, a sequence of careful gestures, and a rhythm that allows the body and mind to find their own next pace. The patch on the kelp and the sealed seam in the coral are small metaphors for the ways you might attend to yourself. Not by remaking yourself, but by arranging the conditions in which rest can come more easily. Now, as you settle more fully into the alcove you imagine, give yourself permission to let the narrative drift. Let the images become less distinct, like a painting viewed through the ripple of water. The words here will grow thinner. That is intentional. There is no need for the mind to hold a detailed picture. Allow the texture, the tone, and the sensation of being held to remain as a soft background. We will offer one final, very gentle suggestion about breathing. A pattern that is as much image as instruction. Imagine the warm vent breathing in the steady way of someone who has been awake and is glad to lie down. Breathe in with it for 3 counts if that feels comfortable. Imagine the breath traveling down into the belly like warm water filling a bowl. Then, allow the out-breath to be a slow, soft release for 4 counts. Imagining the breath floating out like a small plume of light. You can repeat this pattern silently to yourself if it is soothing. In for 3, out for 4. If any part of this pattern is uncomfortable, change it. There is no obligation to count. Simply let the exhale be a moment longer when you can. As those breaths ease, imagine each muscle being noticed and then allowed to rest. The feet, the calves, the knees, the hips, all regarded with a kind patience. The lower back releases in pieces, the spine unwinds like a rope loosening. The shoulders falls if the day has been set aside. The hands open, the jaw softens, the eyes rest heavier in their sockets. The face becomes smooth, in the way the sea silk is smoothed by a hand. There is no need to push beyond comfort. Be gentle with whatever you find. The sanctuary keeps watch in its ordinary way. The bioluminescent blooms make one last polite circuit of brightness and then dim into a uniform dusk. The vent breathes on a slow, even tempo that seems capable of keeping an entire village in calm. The kelp curtains you watched being mended move in tiny rhythmic arcs that could be mistaken for breathing if you close your eyes. All these things are the quiet companions you were offered at the beginning of the night. They remain until the night has done what it will. If you wake at any point, the sanctuary will be as it was, not perfect, but available. The apprentice's lesson will still be there in the careful stitches, and the traveler's ease will continue to live in the alcove's softened fabrics. This is a place that holds without judgment, and returns gentleness when it is asked for. Before the voice grows still, a final small invitation. When you wake, if you find that the night was kinder than you feared, and you would like to find this calm again, there will be more nights like this waiting. A quiet subscription or saving of this playlist is a gentle way to find your path back here when you need it. There is no cost to the sanctuary beyond the willingness to come and rest. Now, rest in the warmth of the vent's slow breath. Let the kelp's motion rock you gently, as though the world itself were folding its arms around you. Let the repaired seam be a small metaphor you can carry. That attentive, unhurried care is available and can be practiced quietly, in small stitches wherever you are. As the sound of hands and tools becomes a memory, as the hum of the apprentices thins, allow the last of your conscious thinking to drift. The sanctuary and its keepers watch softly. They are patient, practical, and kind. You are allowed to let go. Sleep, should it come, will find you in the same calm light that we leave with. If it does not, know that there is no failure in waking. There is only another moment to return, another small ritual to practice. We will keep this place ready for you. A stable alcove in the deep blue where attention is gentle and the work is always quiet. Breathe once more, softly, as the vent breathes with you. Feel the weight of your limbs meet their support. The sanctuary's lamp blooms hold a steady, low glow. The kelp curtains close with a courteous fold. The artisan, the apprentices, and the neighbors move away into their own rest, leaving a watchful hush. When you wake, there will be more nights like this. Rest easy. We'll keep the sanctuary's light for you.